90 Days, 90 Reasons, number 56, written by Madame Elizabeth George. She is the best-selling author of Linley series of British crime novels. She has won the Anthony Award, the Agatha Award, wow, and Francis Le Grand Prix de Littérature Policière. Nice. Reason number 56 is this: Mitt Romney lacks sensitivity. A number of years ago, in commenting upon the way in which actor Brad Pitt ended their marriage and took up with Angelina Jolie, Jennifer Aniston remarked that her former husband lacked a sensitivity chip. I'm not entirely sure whether she was referring to the unseemly alacrity in which Mr. Pitt attached himself to Miss Jolie, or their apparent indiscreet delight with which he and his new beloved romped their way into immediate cohabitation and rapid reproduction. In either case, Miss Aniston's point seemed to be that sometimes one's words and behavior give an indication to the inner workings of one's heart, mind, and soul that bear scrutiny. That is, I think, particularly the case when it comes to the Republican nominee for the President of the United States, Mitt Romney. A few months into the current presidential fray, I happened upon a televised conversation that Mitt Romney was having with some individuals whose identity I am, alas, unable to give you. The topic of the conversation, however, I remember distinctly because it had to do with American man-made automobiles. During this conversation, Mitt indicated that he was the proud owner of several American-made automobiles. He put it this way: I have a couple of caddies, and one at our home in La Jolla, California, and the other at our home in New Hampshire. He went on to reveal that a few years ago, Anne brought me a Mustang for my birthday. He did not clue his listeners in as which garage in which one of his homes shelters this particular vehicle. Now, at this point, unless you're living under stone, you are probably more than well aware of Mitt Romney's behind-doors remarks about the 47% of American public being freeloaders who believe that they are entitled to food, health care, etc. Indeed, if you are living in one of those battleground states, you probably have heard his remark repeated so often on television and radio that you could recite it in your sleep, standing on your head, or in the midst of an armed robbery. But that remark, as unseemly as it was made behind closed doors to a group of people who probably applauded at the end of it, nodding vigorously and seeking similar nods from those seated at the tables in front of which Mr. Romney happened to be standing. So while we can't excuse him for having that sort of opinion over the very people he seeks to govern, we can at least understand that he assumed he was safe from public scrutiny because he was at an event attended by people holding similar beliefs. However, his remark about the two houses, the Cadillacs, and the Mustang was made with the full knowledge that television journalists were right there and the cameras were rolling. And because of this, I find the remark extremely and disturbingly telling of what it reveals. Let me put it this way. You're in the process of planning an event. It will take place at your home, and it is intended to be grand and wonderful, and there are many invitees. A week before the event, you find yourself in a conversation with a group of people. 3 of them are invited, and 1 of them is not. Do you openly discuss how this upcoming event is going to be, how much fun you're all going to have, and how eagerly you anticipate welcoming these individuals into your home? Or do you say nothing about it, wishing to spare the feelings of the person who is not invited, or give them an invitation? That's what I would do. Well, unless I didn't want them to be there. It is my belief that only one of these opinions reflects sensitivity to another person, and it is not the first. If there's a problem with Mitt Romney owning, is there a problem with Mitt Romney owning 2 homes, 2 Cadillacs, and a Mustang, along with however many other vehicles he did not mention during that conversation? Of course not. Mitt Romney can own a fleet of Ferraris if he would like to do so, as well as homes in every state. He can certainly afford them. But the problem is that it does not occur to Mitt Romney that alluding to his personal affluence in public is a tasteless and insensitive thing to do. And that is where the problem lies, because it suggests an indifference to others, not only to their economic situations, but to them as individuals. It is, in my opinion, also unseemly and tasteless. But I hold that opinion because that is how I was raised, and I freely admit that Mitt Romney was raised under a different set of circumstances. Quite different. Now let me say that I can feel your disbelief. I can almost hear you declaring, you hold it right there. But let me ask you this, regardless of what you think of them personally. Can you tell me what kind of car any member of the Kennedy family drives? Can you tell me where their homes are? Can you list how many homes they have? What about Bill and Melinda Gates? What about scores of other wealthy people who go about their lives with the knowledge that they are in a fortunate position held by very few, and as a consequence of their upbringing, know that others do not have the means to live likewise and will never have those means? I'm not speaking about Donald Trump, of course. I'm not speaking about those who have to flaunt what they possess because it's the only way in which they could shore up a faltering ego. I'm speaking of people who go about their lives taking some care in how they deal with others, and I bring this up because it makes sense to me that in someone we elect as President of the United States, we want a man or a woman who has a history of taking care in how they deal with others. Mitt Romney does not have this history, as far as I've been able to ascertain. Indeed, in a speech that predates his couple of Cadillacs remark, a speech I myself watched on television, he says that he does not care about the desperately poor because there is a safety net for them. Indeed, he seems to imply that since we will always have the desperately poor around us, what point is there passing legislation that might lift them out of their desperate poverty? But to me, this is a problem. A man who wishes to be President of the United States while believing that there is actually nothing questionable at all about dismissing a segment of the population. Mitt Romney is a disturbing man for many reasons, but to me, the greatest has to do with his inability to remove the silver spoon from his mouth. We have in past elected presidents vast personal resources and wealth. FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, and John F. Kennedy come to mind at once. But never in my memory is someone with such a lofty background displayed such an appalling ignorance as to the impact of his own words. And when you are President of the United States, rubbing elbows with everyone from world leaders to people devastated by tornadoes, it is helpful to understand what the words reveal about your soul. We have seen Mitt Romney's soul in these last few months, and frankly, I find the soul wanting. There's a lot of chuckling about former President Bill Clinton in his "I feel your pain" response to people in crisis, but Bill Clinton grew up in straitened circumstances with an alcoholic and abusive stepfather, so chances are pretty good that he has always had an astute idea of what it's like to be living on the edge, being presented with painful situations and having to deal with them. There is a lot of derision of President Barack Obama and his professorial approach to dealing with problems. No drama Obama, he is called. He doesn't get worked up. He gets work done. But Barack Obama grew up with a single mom or with his grandparents, living in an apartment from which he daily went to school, came home, studied hard enough to get into some stellar universities. He is married to a woman who grew up sharing an apartment bedroom with her brother, while her dad, suffering from a disease that would cripple him, went out and earned a living for his family. So Barack Obama knows what it is to be an ordinary American trying to get by. So why is it important in a president? Why is it crucial that a president connected at some level with the people of every economic level, of every walk of life, of every level of education? Because he or she is the president. Not merely president of the people with income over $1 million a year. Not merely president of people with Swiss bank accounts and money sheltered in the Cayman Islands, but president of everyone. The rich, the poor, the blue collar, the white collar, the university educated, the high school dropouts. Personally, I do not want a president who has to be reminded that his remarks might be hurtful, insensitive, or indicate something about him that would go better unknown to the voters. I do not want a president who thinks nothing at all about revealing what his personal wealth buys him and his family. I do not want a president who actually believes that Americans are not entitled to food and entitled to health care. I want instead a president who has a vision of this country to which I can relate. Mitt Romney is not that man. He cannot relate himself into a man of sensitivity and breeding. He can pretend to be that man, of course, but the truth presents itself to us in the end. Elizabeth George, Whidbey Island, Washington. 90 Days, 90 Reasons, reason number 56.